invite you to look at the various ways you may be benefiting from any chronic illness or dis-ease. So any kind of diagnosis that you may have, any kind of emotional pattern or habit, anything you're experiencing that you have experienced for a long time and that you no longer want to experience. Those are all fair game for this particular discussion. And when you hear that at first, you may be like, what is she talking about? I do not benefit from these things. I don't want to experience them. I want to move on. And I would challenge you to know that everything we experience, everything we have because we need it or we benefit from it. We get something out of it. If that wasn't true, then we would heal, then we would move forward, then we would do the traditional routes of care, the medicine, surgeries, the dietary changes, the physical stuff. We would do those things and they would work, and we wouldn't have these chronic ailments in place anymore. So I share that with you to bring your resistance down and open you to considering a perspective that maybe you've never thought of before, in the hopes that it could empower you to move forward in a new way and claim your freedom from these things that you no longer wish to experience. I am Dr. Kate Flynn. Welcome back to my channel. I am so happy that you are here. I promise I share things in hopes that they will empower you. This is not about trying to trigger you or poke you with a stick or victim blame or anything like that. Some of these things I have done myself. I've seen them in my clients over the years, and I know that when we resolve these things, that is how we get to move forward. And the next thing we try that is more traditionally oriented or minded usually works. I want you to get what you want. That's the bottom line. That's why I do this work. So let's jump right into the different ways you may be benefiting from any chronic or long-term ailment, illness, or disease. And I invite you to really notice how your body responds to the things that I'm about to share. Do they resonate? Does your body resonate at a particular place? Because your body's always giving you feedback and guiding you and signaling to you. And when we're available to hear those things, rather than get triggered or be offended, we can really use the information to move forward. So, number one, we benefit from these things because they become our identity. They become the way we define ourselves and describe ourselves to others. And when we're experiencing something that is so interwoven into the essence of who we are, it can be more challenging to untangle ourselves from that thing. So does your chronic illness or ailment define you? Is it so much a part of your identity that you have no idea who you would be outside of that? Because that's a pretty scary thing to consider. So the benefit of carrying or holding on to this chronic pattern of dis-ease is that it defines us. We know who we are with this thing, and without it, we don't know. For me, that was anger. Most of my life, I spent very angry and had no idea why. As I started doing this inner work and started to unpack that, I got a very clear sense of how intertwined that anger was in who I defined myself, how I defined myself. Fiercely independent, a badass, I can do it all by myself, I don't need your help. We can imagine that with that identity in place, it's going to be really challenging to thrive and experience something new, but that was so unknown to me, I had to release my resistance and be able to move into uncharted territory. So how does that appeal to you as you are hearing these words? Is that thing that you no longer wish to experience completely wrapped up in who and how you define yourself to be? And are you willing to change that? Number two, If all of our energetic resources, our personal power is caught up or entangled in this dis-ease or chronic ailment, then we never have to do anything differently. We really use it to justify or validate our point of view. I would if I could, but I can't, so I won't. We use it to keep ourselves in situations or relationships that are out of alignment with our authentic truths, whether that be jobs, partnerships, romantic relationships, living arrangements, whatever it is that we are no longer a good fit for. And we also use it to keep good things from entering into our experience. And maybe that's because we feel like we don't deserve those good things or we are unworthy of them. So we really use chronic dis-ease to shield ourselves from having to do anything differently. I would totally work out if I had the energy, but I don't have the energy, so I'm not going to work out. I would eat better if I had the resources and the time to plan or grocery shop or meal prep, but I don't have the energy to do that. I would totally leave this marriage, but I just feel so badly, and that will be one more battle I will have to fight. I would totally look for a new job, but man, I just don't have the energy to do that, even though I know this job is sucking me dry, right? We use it to justify and validate our point of view. And then we say, I can't, I just can't. It's too hard. I don't have the energy. And if we resolve these things, we know that we will feel better. We know that we will then have all the energy that's been freed up from carrying that chronic ailment with us, and we'll have to do something differently. Number 3, enjoy a nice deep breath. Because sometimes we use chronic illness or disease as a way to martyr ourselves. Maybe we've spent our whole lives putting ourselves last, trying to make other people happy, trying to love them enough to whatever it is. And maybe we don't get the recognition we feel like we deserve for doing that. Or maybe no matter what we do, we can't stop our loved ones from having challenging experiences. We cannot interrupt that. We can't make them make different choices no matter what we do. So we use the illness or disease as a way to punish ourselves, because no matter what, it's not good enough to do the things that mentally our minds tell us that we should be able to do for our loved ones. And maybe we do this because we didn't have good models for how to take care of ourselves. Maybe we do this so that we never have to prioritize or learn how to prioritize caring for ourselves. And I think that this is so important to at least consider, because so many of us are teaching these patterns to our children. That my life, I have nothing for my own life. My own life is about everybody else. And how will they have a model as to how to care for themselves and prioritize their health and well-being if no one's showing them that? Number 4, our chronic ailment or disease serves as a connection point that keeps us bound to the past. It's a physical manifestation or reminder of people, places, or potentials, or maybe even the way you thought your life was going to work out. So this could be, this could even be a connection point with loved ones that have passed on, and a way to hold you bound to keeping their memory alive somehow. It can be the thing that made you zig when you were 100% sure you were going to zag. Think of, I know someone that was kind of an up-and-coming basketball star. They were going to college for it. It defined them. It was very much their passion. And then they got injured at a part-time job after school, and they could no longer do that thing that really defined them. So their chronic pain from that keeps them at that place, holding on to the potential of being this basketball star, this athlete that never manifested, that was never realized. It can also be, I've seen clients, we've done work, and before they were really allergic to bee stings, and they resolved some of this inner entanglement that goes on. They got stung by a bee, and they no longer had that experience. And what we were working on actually had to do with her parents having an argument in front of her, and at that moment she was stung by a bee, and from that moment forward she was allergic to bee stings. So it held her bound to that point in time in the turmoil of her parents' conflict. I know of another person that entered into a new circumstance where he was very different than other people were of his upbringing and ethnicity, and they rejected him, even though he was from that same sort of background and group, because he didn't sound like them. They treated him as an outcast, and that's where a pattern of addiction started to come into play. So that challenged his identity, that challenged who he was, and the physical manifestation of the addiction holds him back to that time and space. So the final topic I want to touch on is blame. Oftentimes, we hold others in a state of blame because whatever they did had a big impact on our lives and circumstances and outcomes. And so if I was in a car wreck and I had, chronic neck pain or back pain from that, and I blamed other circumstances on my pain, whether it was the driver of the other car, the argument or experience I had that put me in a mindset where I wasn't paying attention and I had this accident, whatever it is or may be, when we blame someone else for whatever it is we're experiencing, it holds that trauma in place inside of us. And I am not a big proponent of you have to forgive. I don't think that's true. For me, it's about acceptance, because when we're willing to look at whatever has happened and say, yep, that's what happened. If it could have been different, it would have. It wasn't. So now from this new place is where I have to decide, or I get to decide how I want to move forward from here. But if I'm continuing to blame another for my circumstance, then that can hold physical dis-ease or chronic illness in place. And sometimes it is a direct connection like that with the car accident, the pain, and the other driver, whatever circumstance. Sometimes it's just the heaviness of life in general. If we feel, maybe we were abused or mistreated or whatever it is that's happened to us that we blame other people for, it can hold that connection in place and make it so that no matter what you try to resolve this chronic state of being, nothing works. So, did any of those 5 things resonate with you? Did you have any kind of aha moments or signals from your physical body saying it would be really good if we paid attention to this? If so, make a note of that. Sometimes just the awareness itself is enough to open the space to move forward in a different way. So I promised you 3 options, 3 things you can do to move forward. And the first is to try to unhear anything you just heard and really buckle down on those traditional routes of care, diet, exercise, medications, whatever it may be. The second is to bring these things up to a therapist to try to understand them, to work through them, to resolve them. And that is a great place to start. For me, I found that I no longer want to play in the realm of my mental mind, thinking thoughts, because it's just crazy making for me. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, puts things more challenging than they need to be. And that's why I'm super excited to share a third option, which is consider working with me. I've found a way to streamline this process to get you to kind of ascend out of your thinking thoughts, to rise up into a new realm where you can tap into your intuition and say, here's where my life force energy is being siphoned away from me. Identify the distortion without understanding it, without trying to figure it out or make sense of it. And then from there, identify and implement the correction. Because when you do that, it can be so easy. It can be so easy. I guarantee that no matter what's going on, it's not logical and it's not going to make sense anyway. So do whatever you feel is going to be the best course of action for you. And if working with me does feel like it, then I would love to hear from you. Please reach out. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.